Hi everybody, and welcome to the Toronto Real Estate Show with Jenelle and Leslie. I'm Jenelle Cameron.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Pearson.
And today we are going to talk about condo living in the city of Toronto. Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you had a great week. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a topic today that is, I think, sort of more relevant than ever to the real estate market because so many people are thinking about condo living for various reasons. And so I thought we would go over today the pros and cons of living in a Toronto condo. So we've talked about this a little bit here over the last couple of weeks. Condo sales have been very slow.
Very slow, all over.
All over.
Particularly, downtown Toronto,
Yeah.
in what we call C1 and C8, which is south of Bloor. But I think it's true everywhere.
I think it is too, and I think as we talked about last time, it's going to be interesting to see the stats for May and whether or not, we've had any shift in the condo sales. Prices actually in April were up slightly over last year in condo sales, but we're just seeing a lot of stuff slow to move. It's not that it's not moving, but it's very slow.
So it means there's more to choose from and also more room to negotiate, you would think, right?
Yeah, you would. There's some good opportunity. I think that's why we wanted to kind of go over this topic today, because there's a lot of opportunity out there to purchase a condo, be it an investment property or for yourself. If you've been thinking about jumping into the real estate market and can't afford a home, which we're still looking at, well over $1 million for the average price of a home. Where downtown you could get a 1-bedroom condo for, $650,000, $700,000,
right?
Maybe even a little bit less depending where. And there's still opportunity to get into the real estate market that way. And I think if you're someone who's thinking about getting into the real estate market for the first time, why wouldn't you jump in at a condo? It doesn't mean you have to stay there forever when you outgrow it.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been, certainly for investors, more pro buying something out of the city and something with more than one unit. But with the way things are going with condos, I'm kind of shifting my perception or my approach to that and thinking, because it's such a good opportunity to buy a condo downtown, more than ever before, that might be the way to go. I would recommend, buyers, investors go.
Yeah.
That's from the investment point of view. As a buyer and an end user of a condo, kind of same thing. If you've been holding out and continuing to rent, waiting for that townhouse or semi, why not now get a great condo downtown and, just put that off for a bit?
So here's what I want to tell you. Right now, in the core of the city, so again, we're just talking south of Bloor, C1, C8, there are 2,527 listings.
Right. So doesn't that bode well for a buyer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would do it. I mean, maybe I should do it.
I know. Me too. That's it. I mean, that's an unbelievable amount of property listings right now. Unbelievable amount.
And there's no reason to. We don't suspect those values are there's going to be ebbs and flows, but over time they're not going to drop. And interest in rentals downtown, we don't imagine going to shift. So it's kind of a stable investment.
Yeah.
Now I still love having, as an investor, more than one unit in the property, but you know what? If you've got just that 650 or 7, I think I would do it.
And there are, just for reference, 6,237 condos for sale in the city of Toronto.
Right.
In general.
So then most of them are downtown, south of Bloor.
Yeah, 2,500 out of 6,000.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. So, then I thought, well, let's look at kind of the pros and cons, because I think condo living is not for everybody, but
yeah, and I think maybe some buyers are not moving in that direction because they haven't lived in a condo before. Like if I had never lived in one, and I only rented one briefly like 30 years ago, I would be, I'll wait till I can get a house because that's all I know.
Right.
So a lot of people I think might be hesitant for that very reason. But so it's good to talk about the pros and cons and to try and like calm down some of that hesitation.
Yeah.
If it's out there.
Kind of open your eyes to it if it's something that you have been thinking about or might be thinking about.
So how do you want to have this conversation? Go through pros?
Let's go through the pros.
Go through cons? Okay, pros.
Yeah. Number one, I'd say less expensive.
Yeah.
As a rule.
So that point is that you can do it.
Yeah. You can
whereas you might not
Mm-hmm.
be able to afford a house right now.
Yeah.
It's an option that is available to more people,
Mm-hmm.
more at a better, a lower price.
And for the last several months and for most of history, the prices of condos go up at the same rate houses are close to. So it's a solid investment that you know that you're going to make money on as long as you're choosing the right building.
Yeah, that's a stat that's always surprised me because I went into this having the assumption that house growth was stronger. So it made more sense to hold out, if you're just strictly looking at the finances and equity growth, to hold out for a house. But it's never been the case. You're going to make less money because the value is less to begin with, but the rate of increase has been fairly
steady.
Yeah, and fairly equal to that of freehold houses.
Yeah. So affordability, I think, has got to be the number one reason why you might choose a condo. One of the main pros.
Right.
However, there are maintenance fees.
Right.
So we'll talk about that maybe as a con, but as a pro, I want to say that from a condo perspective, when you are paying maintenance fees, that means you don't have to do any maintenance yourself.
So it's ease of living. It's also, what would be important to me in that factor is just no surprises.
Yes.
With a house, you can have like a slush fund, and we'll talk about that in the con section, but with paying maintenance fees, you know what you're paying.
Yeah.
And other than, some special circumstances, that known to a lot of people should be a pro.
There's a real misconception out there that maintenance fees are money wasted, expensive, ridiculous, throwing away the money. But just think about this for a second. If you have a 700 square foot condo and your maintenance fees are, let's say, $500 a month, and they include your heat and your hydro and your water, and in some cases other things like cable, and then you have a gym, and then you have a pool, and so when you add all those things up, because you might be paying for a gym membership and to go use the pool at the Y and this and that, I think most people will find that it kind of nets out.
Yeah.
And also, you don't have to do any of the maintenance yourself. So if you like to garden, cut the grass, whatever, but if you don't, you don't have that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more when we talk about the other side.
Yeah.
Another pro.
Convenience for most people. Most condos are in a walkable, easy area.
Accessible. Yeah, so they're typically in concentrated areas. They're typically on main streets in neighborhoods. So that gives a sense of safety and security and also accessibility. You're generally going to be quite close to public transit because that's where they're going to want to build them, and that's where they are.
Yeah. A lot of times you're right near restaurants, grocery stores, everything's walkable. Those are, for a lot of people, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
To me, living somewhere where I have to get in the car all the time, whether I do or not, it's another story, but knowing that I have the option is really nice.
Yeah.
And generally you get that with condos downtown.
Yeah. Yeah, and okay, my mind went blank.
Yeah. Okay, safety, I would say, is another big one. So a lot of people are really concerned, right? Living alone or living in a home and being vulnerable, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I think safety is a kind of something to think about if you're one of those people who feel nervous being in a house by yourself, condo living is a good option.
So you mean there just the proximity of other people,
Mm-hmm.
but also, having security or, concierge service,
Yes.
just having someone man that door that you don't have in your house.
Right. And no one's going to, climb up to the 12th floor by and large to break into your unit out of 600 in a building as easily as maybe they would, into a home.
Yeah.
Listen, it's not something I've ever been concerned about, but I do hear this from people sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're with all the car thefts and things going on. I mean, it is.
Well, that's another thing.
It is
maybe.
convenience.
Yeah, parking.
is
Garage
a
is an
big
issue.
one.
You don't always have that with the purchase of a freehold or townhouse. Even a condo townhouse, you don't always have that. So that is something to think about.
Yeah. There's also a sense of community in a condo building, which I think if you are part of the building, I think this can be really beneficial for a lot of people. Let's say, for example, you're a little bit older, maybe you're retired. There are some buildings that have networking groups and buses that take you places and opportunities to
bridge club,
theater
outings,
yes, and
casino
I think that's
outings.
wonderful. I mean, it really changes how seniors, or even just older people, retired people, how they live their life and they're not stuck by themselves.
They're not
at
isolated
home.
in their individual house and just relying on family to visit. There's built-in socialization.
That's right.
And I think that there are other buildings where the same is true for younger people.
Yeah.
Where there's restaurants often on site.
Yeah.
Or rooftop
right, barbecues.
Space that gets used and
Yeah.
people are hanging out.
Yeah.
A lot of them would have gyms, so you're not paying that gym fee.
Yeah, and some of them have some pretty spectacular gyms.
Yeah.
Like gyms that are, as good as any gym you're paying $100 a month for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tracks. Yeah. No, so I think that the pro is the socialization that you just don't get when you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that now. I'm staying temporarily in a house by myself. I've lived in houses most of my life, but I've always had people living with me. This is the first time I'm living in a house by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I otherwise live in a triplex, and I live on my own, but that's not living by myself.
Yeah.
So we socialize. I socialize with the other people in the house. Well, now I find living in this house that I'm temporarily staying in, there's no one else.
Yeah.
No one's coming to the door. No one's sitting in my backyard with me having a drink of wine. So
you know what? That's a really and you wouldn't know that unless you had the other experience.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll need to talk about that further.
Any other pros?
I would say I mentioned maintenance, but I think there are those of us out there who never want to repair roof or furnace or cut the grass or do anything that requires work.
Yeah, so if you're of that mindset, it's the place for you for sure.
It is, and I think
you just walk in and press the elevator button.
And if you're someone who travels a lot, it's another great option because you can literally lock the door and leave.
Yeah.
And so this is what you're paying for, right? The convenience.
Yeah. Convenience, that's a pro.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the cons then. We mentioned the obvious one, which is maintenance fees, which personally I don't think is a con. However, you don't have control over what you're paying, and that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, and it's not on the same topic really, but the bigger con to me of the maintenance fees is the lack of control I would have over what gets done and how it gets done.
Condo rules.
Like sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
Yeah.
But like I might not like the carpet that's put in the hallway, but I have to live with it.
Right.
I have a hard time with that part of like the maintenance fees kind of thing. I can't have so you're paying. And what do they say, if you own a house, I think they suggest that you set aside 1% of your purchase price every year for maintenance. So, I do agree with you that quite often they kind of level out.
Yeah.
The difference is with a house, maybe you shouldn't do this, but you can easily put off, some of that maintenance.
That's true. And in a condo, you have
You're
no
paying
choice.
for it, and it's being done regardless. So
So
that's
if
both a
you-
pro and a con.
It is, and if you live in a large building that has a very large reserve fund and they decide they want to repair all the balconies this year, no problem, you've got the money in the reserve fund. If you live in a smaller building and all of a sudden they come to you and say, you know, you need to pay for this and it's gonna cost you X number of more dollars every month in your fees, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And
Right.
certainly I've seen that happen with a lot of people over the years. So it is important to get
Yeah.
into the right building that's managed well. And I think a lot of people want the small boutique building. I think there's some benefits sometimes to getting into a larger building where you have a little bit more security about how the money's being spent sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And having a building with a good history and having a condo board that has positive history is really important.
Yeah.
And
I would urge everybody buying a condo to try and get on that board.
Well, and I think it's a horrible task.
Yeah, I think it's
but
awful.
it's important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so if you don't like what's being done, you have no recourse unless you're actually on the board. And that can be tricky because if everyone decides that they want to redo the locker room and you don't see anything wrong with it,
Yeah.
you know, you've got
Yeah,
that
so
as
that's a
option.
con.
That's a con.
And it's both the costs, but also the lack of control. Like you
Yeah.
living in a condo, you give up control.
Yeah.
If you can't have pink blinds, you can't have pink blinds.
Yeah, you gotta know that going in.
Yeah, and that's the part of it that I would struggle with is
Or-
the lack of control.
Yeah, you want to replace the flooring, but they don't like the kind of, they can't,
Yeah.
they say, no, you can't do hardwood, you have
Yeah.
to do
Right,
something.
right.
Yeah,
That's my biggest issue, I think,
Yeah.
if I were living in a condo, is a lack of control.
my biggest issue with living in a condo with respect to maintenance fees is when you're paying for things that aren't working. So for example, my mother lives in a condo where the pool has not been operating for 4 years,
Oh, but you continue to
but she's
pay?
paying the fees
Yeah.
for the pool and everything
I don't
else.
think I ever would have thought about that.
Yeah, and I find that frustrating because if I was living in her building,
Yeah, that's
and
a
I
lot
used
of
to
money.
try to go all the time to use her pool during COVID, but of course it was closed at that point and it still hasn't reopened. So that's a problem, and and then you've got real no control
Yeah.
over what's going on with the
Right.
money and why we're not fixing
Right.
the one thing that you want to use.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, or you go into some gyms and half the treadmills are broken or the bikes are broken and you're like, well, this is what I'm paying for. Why isn't this working?
So is that indicative of poor management?
I think it's always indicative of
Yeah.
poor management.
Yeah, because something, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, another con I would say would be noise. So, and I'm gonna say noise and smells.
Yeah, put them together.
Yeah.
You're not living with space around you that you get in other type of properties. There
Yeah.
are people right beside you on either side usually, and then usually above you and below you.
Mhm.
So it's, just proximity
Mhm.
can create challenges
Yeah.
in both terms of noise and smell and
Yeah. And if there's not a non-smoking policy, that can be a real problem for people. So if you are thinking about buying a condo, make sure the condo building, if you don't smoke, has a non-smoking policy, because there's nothing worse than having to smell weed all day
yeah,
from your balcony and you don't
that
smoke
smell.
it. Yeah.
But even then, there's a risk, isn't there? Because that policy can change.
Yeah, I think there's a risk. I think we're seeing more anti-smoking,
Yeah.
but
But
yes.
I mean, I guess my question is, with any policy,
With
and
any
you buy
policy,
a
yeah.
condo based on the policies in
Mhm.
place, but they could change at any time.
That's
I
right.
was thinking specifically about, maybe we're moving on to another con. So if you want to say more about noise and smell, I
No.
won't say.
No, go ahead.
Have you ever though walked down typically an
Yeah.
apartment aisle and not hall and not
Oh,
a
yeah.
condo hall, and just the smells of the cooking? Like,
Oh, yeah.
the cooking, I'm sure, is fabulous, but you don't want this.
I don't want to smell that.
No.
And mostly you can't smell it in the unit, but still you have to deal with it down the hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in condos, I don't have that strong sense that that's a problem. It's
Older
apartment
buildings,
buildings.
it
Yeah.
seems, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I know what you're gonna say.
Well, I don't know. I was going to move on to Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's the other thing. If you live in a building that has Airbnb, rentals allowed, that can be a problem. Good if you want to rent
It depends on your purpose.
Like ask these questions, because if you move into a building and you don't want that and you're stuck with Airbnb, it can be very loud and very chaotic, especially right downtown.
Just turmoil, just transition. We recently sold a condo that allows Airbnbs, and just the traffic. And
in the lobby.
And the just congestion.
Yes.
If that's an issue for you. But on the other hand, you're right. If you are looking for something that's that has short-term rental possibility, then that's your dream. There aren't very many of them, are there?
They're way less than there used to be. I think right now we're seeing a lot less Airbnb rental options out there, because a lot of buildings from owners are prohibiting short-term rental.
Yeah.
And I understand that. But on that note, if you buy something with the intent to Airbnb it, and just be warned that the rules could change.
So that's in the context that I
problem.
originally thought of it, is that rules can change at any time. So that's a con of buying a condo.
Yeah.
Now, you know much more about this than I do, but can owners only Airbnb their primary residence?
No, I don't think so.
You can, if you own, you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Okay, then another obvious one I would say is size, right? Because a lot of people going into a condo, they've been living in a big home, and then all of a sudden they go to 800 square feet in a little tiny locker. So this is a great exercise for decluttering your mind and your life, but if you are not ready for that, it can be a little shocking.
You're exactly right in that you have to be ready for that. I have downsized hugely, and I find nothing more liberating than getting rid of everything. So I guess I was ready for it. That all depends on your age and stage, but they're generally smaller than what you're coming from.
Yeah, and you have to be prepared.
Yeah.
Any other cons you can think of? I guess it could be loud, not just within the unit, but from outside, right?
Yeah,
I'm thinking of the poor ICE condos that there's always sirens and problems and police and I've got one, fire alarms. Because this can be a really big issue.
Like with elevator use.
Well, that's another one.
Okay.
But fire alarms in the building, I know our former assistant, where she lived, there was nothing. All the time, the fire alarm would go off in the middle of the night. They'd often have to get downstairs.
And why is that?
I think
it's just numbers?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I lived in an apartment building once where somebody used to pull the fire alarm all the time.
I've heard that in university dorms, but I've not even thought of that. But I do mention elevators.
Elevators.
That's a big con.
Yeah, because most buildings are great. There are a few in the city that I can think of off the top of my head, and I could name, but I won't, that have not enough elevators for the amount of people, and you could be waiting for an elevator for 20 minutes, if at all.
Yeah.
There's one building in particular that I'm thinking of that not only is there always delays, there was a time last year where all 3 elevators were down, and it's 40 stories.
Oh my God.
And they were down for 3 days.
Yeah.
So
what do you do?
There's nothing. So, what does that tell you? Move to a lower floor, perhaps, something that it is walkable, or just kind of get ready to know that this could happen. It's the waiting on the elevators, I think, that would annoy me.
Yeah, and I think we've all seen the pictures on Instagram of like the people sitting in the hallways waiting for a long time for their elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
elevator life does not excite me.
No, but most buildings, like I say, they're not like that. Most of them have the new elevator systems now where they're directed to the floor you're going. There's not that same sort of wait and hope that one comes along. So I don't want to say they're all the same, but they're if you're looking for a condo on a higher floor, you have to do your research, ask people,
consider that,
and make sure that it's a building that has enough elevators to go around, and everyone knows which ones these are. So.
Right. I just thought of another con, depending on your life, is relatively little outdoor space.
Yeah, outdoor space is yeah, because some buildings, obviously, you hopefully you bought something with a little balcony or something like that. That's important. And a lot of buildings have lovely outdoor space, rooftop terraces, gardens, different things like that. But it's not your own.
Yeah.
So for some people, it's a struggle.
Yeah, and I think consequently, I think they're highly underutilized.
They are. I think
people just don't want to go from their condo on the 11th floor and take the elevator down
Right.
or up to go and sit.
But I'm telling you, if I some of these buildings with their outdoor rooftop
They're lovely.
terraces
Yeah.
overlooking the lake,
Yeah.
I'd be up there with my
Yeah.
laptop every day doing
I
my
say
work.
I think I would too, but I probably wouldn't end up doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other cons?
No, I don't think so. I mean, condo living.
Another con I think would be, and I'm thinking on the spot, would it be more likely, as we're seeing now, that the condo real estate market is more susceptible to
Fluctuation.
yeah, and like slow markets
I
more
don't think
than
it ever has been before, but certainly is now.
Mhm.
Maybe that's a function of there being is so much new construction that's gone on in the last several years. I don't know. That's a good question. I would say maybe in the future that's a possibility. Nothing we've seen per se, but yeah, food for thought.
Yeah, I mean,
Condo living is definitely for me. I don't live in one yet, but I want to. But I think, I plan to make use of amenities. If you're going to move to a condo and you don't make use of the amenities,
you're
then
wasting
I think you're
some
wasting
money.
time.
Yeah, I think it's in my future as well, either for personal use or investment, and I think it's time to stop just viewing them negatively. Not just me, but buyers out there. If you're renting and not owning, and because this is holding you up, get over it.
Get one.
And what I've learned, like I've always known, but what I've learned especially lately is nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever.
You hate it, get out.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah.
Make a bit of money, move on.
Yeah.
I don't understand what the big deal is.
I
Why
think
does everybody?
people. Yeah.
Why
I
do they
think
get so-
people probably hold on to houses longer than they hold on to condos. Do you think that would be true?
I think that would be true, but nonetheless, I just don't get why people are so afraid to make changes.
Well, you're speaking to someone who is the biggest change avoider of all. And it's just, I don't know if it's a comfort level, it's an insecurity of the uncertainty. I'm more open to change now, having gone through a lot of it, than I was when I sat for 20 years with no change.
Yeah.
But I think we are programmed for inertia.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be.
We
When it
shouldn't
comes
be,
to
because
housing-
nothing is forever.
No, it doesn't matter.
So if you made a decision and you regret it, change it.
Yeah, move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the shoes, I don't wear them.
Yeah, that's it. I can buy new ones.
Yeah, I
Sell
mean,
those
and you don't want to do it 90 days after you close, but with some foresight, sure.
Yeah.
And you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I don't think we encourage people to make short-term housing purchases.
No, but I think it's important that we stress that a decision doesn't mean the rest of your life.
Right.
You've got options.
Yeah. Something in between 90
Yeah.
days and the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's good. All right, people, we better wrap it up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social channels at the Jenelle Cameron Team. At the same time, we always love your feedback. If you don't mind rating this podcast wherever you're listening, we would really appreciate it. Drop us a line, let us know that you're listening and that you're enjoying it or not. We'd really appreciate it. So on that note, happy real estate.
Happy real estate, everyone.